Welcome to Modern Figures Podcast, hosted by Dr. Jeremy Waysome
and Dr. Kyla McMullen, where we are elevating the voices of Black women in computing to inspire the next generation of Black female coders.
This podcast exists to highlight the stories of Black women in computing, inspire high schoolers and the young at heart, and dispel myths and preconceptions about Black women in computing. Kyla and I are from the Institute for African American Mentoring in Computing Sciences, or IMCS, which serves as a national resource for computing students, faculty, and industry professionals, and we're funded by the National Science Foundation. Our goal is to increase the number of African Americans receiving doctoral degrees in computing sciences, promote and engage students in teaching and training opportunities, and to add more diverse researchers into the advanced technology workforce.
This podcast is funded by the National Center for Women in Information Technology. NCWIT is a nonprofit that convenes, equips, and unites change leader organizations to increase the participation of all women in the field of computing.
Thank you for that note from our sponsors.
So today we have an extremely special guest in the studio with us. Today we have Dr. Angelique Johnson, who is a rock star. She has her own tech company called MemStim that she founded from the ground up, doing everything herself. She's now at a place where she can, hire and have lots more people. So we're going to talk to her today to find out how in the world she does this, how we can get on her level, and I'm excited to have you here today.
Ooh, I'm excited to be here.
Cool.
So let's start out with how you grew up and what your experiences were like as a young child.
Okay, so I guess the first most critical fact is that I grew up in a family with 11 children. I had two parents that were at home, both of them were in the STEM area. So my dad, he was a chemical engineer, environmental engineer. My mom, she had majored in math, and she actually went to work for General Electric when she graduated from Fisk University doing coding. So she was kind of those early punch card coders. But as soon as she started having kids, or not shortly thereafter, she became a stay-at-home mother. I mean, as you can imagine, with 11 kids.
Yeah.
That's more than a full-time job. But she was really invested in raising us. And so she actually started homeschooling us at a certain age. So not all of us were homeschooled, but I was, I think, in first grade when she started homeschooling us. So science and engineering and math was pretty key to my education early on.
Did you go to a traditional school in high school?
Nope, I was homeschooled all the way through.
Wow.
First school was college.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
All the way through.
That's amazing.
So we had she would send us away in the summertime, me and my younger sister Maya, to a math camp. It sounds a little nerdy, it was actually pretty fun, in Texas. So that was kind of maybe my first college campus experience.
Yeah.
That was when, I think maybe started doing that when I was 15.
Okay.
But yeah, my first kind of full schooling was good old UMBC.
That's crazy. I don't know that I've met anyone who didn't have a
Social
any
disorder.
kind of what? That is not what I was gonna say.
Fill in the blank for you.
That is not.
Anybody who wasn't a serial killer, that was.
People who, I'm just saying, you're very well adjusted. Most people are like, oh yeah, I went to homeschool up until high school or up until middle, but all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was rare back then, but now it's more common. So now people there's more homeschool groups. So there were some homeschool groups that we went to, back then. But I think I had so many older siblings, and that probably helped. And my mom was always trying to find homeschool groups, so we'd meet with some homeschool groups which were large, to be 100 of kids, and some homeschool groups were small, just be us and 3 other families, and we'd meet up in somebody's living room once a week.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean it in that way. I was saying you clearly had a lot of experiences that inspired you to pursue, something different, right? Something that most kids who are homeschooled wouldn't have had the exposure to. So I think it's really cool that you chose to go to college and pursue computer science early on, Because most people going into college have no clue what they're going to do. And your mom clearly had a huge influence on your lives. What about your siblings? Did any of them go on to be computer scientists too?
We're mostly, almost everybody is in STEM.
Okay.
Although now, since we've had STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and arts, math, then so all of us are in STEAM.
Cool.
But so we have some people in my family. My oldest brother, he does like IT. He actually was kind of on the early, maybe he's about to turn 50 or maybe already turned 50. A little bit shady on the ages.
Well, there are 11 of you, right?
Yeah, he's somewhere in the 50s. You know, maybe not quite there yet. But so he was kind of really early on, self-taught, you know, techie, and you know, kind of back when, you know, it wasn't a college degree for it, you know, you didn't have to, wasn't any high school classes for it, and he just kind of was self-taught all the way down to, like, you know, as you go up down the line, we've had people in computer science, people in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering and biomedical engineering, math. My younger sister Maya is actually the first African-American female to be a math instructor at Texas A&M, where she got her PhD, so she's there now, so it's, so we're
boss family
in there.
Boss.
Yes, not just one rock star, everybody is. Cool. That's amazing. So we should mention that you and Kyla are really good friends.
That's right.
Because
I mean, she's alright.
Oh. Yeah.
You know,
I don't want to touch on that.
You know,
I'm not trying to touch on that on this podcast today. But y'all have known each other since undergrad and both ended up going to Michigan together for graduate school.
Right.
So probably both of you should talk about that, like what it was like at UMBC and then the differences between that and Michigan in terms of pursuing degrees.
I don't know if you would agree, Angie. I would say, like, at UMBC, like, we had a lot of just scaffolding, like lots of help, a huge network that you could just say, hey, I'm having a problem with something, and just walk into someone's office. And our whole scholarship program had like 8 full-time staff members whose job it was to make sure that these 200 students had the best academic experience ever. And this was because of, you know, an endowment that they had been given, but, you know, most schools don't have that. So get to Michigan and we're like, hey, so who do I talk to if I'm failing this course?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And you know, the reason that, and I think both of us probably went to Michigan for the same reason. I was going to go somewhere else. I was sold. I had already accepted to another university. I had already accepted the fellowship package and everything. But my mom was like, you know, you should go to Michigan. And, you know, and you know, God had told her. And I was like, God ain't telling me nothing. But in time he did. I just didn't want to hear it. I just wasn't trying to be up there in the cold weather. But I went for a visitation weekend. They had the SMESG program, which was a Society of Minority Engineering Students graduate component or something like that. And I went up for a visit, and I was like, whoa, there's all these supportive black people. And it felt a lot like the Meyerhoff Scholarship program that we had at UMBC. And so, you know, that kind of started swaying me a little bit, but I was still rigid. And then eventually, you know, God did tell me, like, yeah, this is where you need to be, because you need that support, the same support that got me through being in a primarily white institute in undergrad. I needed that in grad school. The big difference though, is when you kind of got on campus, you realize that it's different having a support group of black people in your discipline. You know, because, you know, we had that at the Meyerhoff Scholarship, we had that in undergrad. Like, there were a handful of black people in all of my classes that we could study together. When you got on to grad school, it was like, oh, there's a handful of us spread across 50,000 students on the whole entire campus. And you realize that, yeah, you're kind of on your own when you get in your department and you're the only African-American female to have even been in the PhD program in like decades.
There were professors who had never taught a black student on the graduate level and had no problem telling you that.
Intriguing.
Yeah, we're not talking about 1980. This is like 2005, 2006 we're talking about.
Oh yeah, so you just have to go through all that kind of stuff.
So, you have a startup company called MemStim. What does MemStim mean?
So MemStim is it's actually shorthand for MEMS stimulators, and MEMS, M-E-M-S, is shorthand for microelectromechanical systems.
Fancy.
basically the same technology they use to make integrated circuits, but to make all kinds of mechanically moving devices, electrically actuating and sensing devices.
Cool.
Nanotechnology, but a little bit bigger.
Bigger than nano, smaller than micro, somewhere in the middle.
Micro, yeah, it's in the micro range. But it also, nowadays, in science, like, people start fudging all the lines, depending on the grant application.
Right.
So depending on the funding agency, could be nano, could be micro, could be macro.
Like who's writing the check?
Who's writing the check? What you want it to be.
So the electronic components themselves are on that scale. They're super, 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 super tiny.
Yeah.
In other words.
Some of the devices, some of the components on the devices I make are smaller than 1/10 the strand of the human hair.
Whoa.
A diameter of a human strand of hair. So I always tell people, like, especially if I'm talking to kids, I'll say, take a piece of your hair and think about the diameter of that, which is usually between 150, 200 microns. Okay, now think about that being 10 times smaller. That's what, some of the wires that we're creating are that small. And that's still relatively big in the world of MEMS and nanotechnology. So it's small, but it's powerful. It's a powerful technology. It's the reason, also people, it's the reason why, we have all these computers in our pockets now that used to take up a whole entire building.
Right.
Because people got away from, hand assembling, vacuum tubes, and they automated the process so that if you can draw it on a computer-aided design program, using software, then you can make it in an actual physical clean room environment. And that's what we're trying to do for medical technologies with MemStim. A lot of medical technologies are still assembled by hand. So they might have circuit chips in them that are made with automated manufacturing. But a lot of the components that are physically touching the body, the casings, in our case, medical stimulating wires that stimulate nerves and neurons for relieving chronic pain, helping with Parkinson's, tremors, restoring hearing. All that technology is assembled by hand with somebody going back to the size of the wires, right? So once there's a quarter of the strand of the human, quarter diameter human strand of hair, people are micro welding that, looking through a microscope to assemble it.
Isn't that crazy?
So wait, before we get really in detail about your products and what you're creating, you've been moving your hands a lot.
And honestly,
are these nails? Oh my goodness.
Nails.
I love them. What's going on there? Can you explain?
So they're what do you call it? Chrome finish. I love them. I really love them. I'm gonna tell you my secret to them because people ask me a secret recipe. People ask me like, "Oh, where are you getting that?"
Okay, so we can't know.
You can't know how. But what you can know is that I like things like this. I like that as a female computer scientist, as a female scientist, as a female engineer, I can, and being owning my own company, I don't have anybody telling me what nails I can put on and can't put on, you can't see, I guess, maybe later on you could see, but I'm have a kind of a faux hawk thing going on with my hair, and it's just my natural curls. And I don't know, anytime I have a moment to just express myself in the world of engineering, that's important.
Yeah, you were saying earlier how anytime that there's a spotlight or a highlight on a black woman in technology or computing, that it's always, let's get a picture of you in your lab, a picture of me, a picture of you in your classroom, a picture of that. That's not natural. How about me when I'm being me? Can we just show that image? So
is that the headscarf and pajamas you, or?
Oh, well.
That's on a good day, actually.
Okay, yeah, because that would be me, actually.
Show them how we really live.
Exactly.
But that's so true, because what you want to stimulate young girls to go into science and technology, but you keep showing them the same images of women sitting down at computers typing away, or women looking under a microscope, or women in a lab, or women
and it's a boxy jacket.
Yeah, and they don't want to do that. They want to interact with human beings. So they think, if I become a computer scientist, then I'm just going to be interacting with the computer all day long, and that's the last thing that they want to do. But if you actually show them, hey, us doing dance, us going out and doing things like this podcast, this is part of computer science too. There's all these different things, that are involved in it that they don't want to show because they themselves sometimes don't understand that there's more to the female scientist, computer scientist, than just the computer code.
Yeah, we've made it a point to wear like t-shirts and talk about our hair on the podcast.
Exactly.
So.
And Angie, one thing that I especially like about your research and what you've done is because you've taken computing, computer engineering, and we've talked about how like the new sort of wave of innovation is applying it to other fields. So the fact that you have such a heavily medical application, people wouldn't know, oh, I could go to school for computer engineering. Because you're undergrads in computer engineering. People would think that, from what you work on now, you would have some medical background. But the fact that, you can merge these two fields together and show people, hey, you can actually impact the person's life and not, like you said, be stuck behind a computer the whole day.
Right.
Yeah, that's the CS plus X thing that we've been talking about.
I mean, who has a monolithic career nowadays? We're sitting there talking about, I'm going to be a computer scientist, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer, and then you get to, you get beyond college, and you realize, like, geez, that was all a farce. Like, tell me the day of the week. I'm a computer scientist today, might be a mechanical engineer tomorrow, I might be, a beauty pageant director.
Exactly, depends on what day it is.
Depends on what day it is. It might be it might be a production assistant on another day. So I think having a foundation in computer engineering was really critical because you can do anything with computers. You can be in any discipline if your foundation is in computer science or computer engineering, and then you just start building upon and adding things as you go. And a lot of the stuff that I added as I went was not stuff I was taught. Like, I've never taken a biology class. Like, never in my life. I've taken a biology class, and I'm in medical devices. Now, nobody called the police. I'm not a doctor, but I do play one in the lab. but the reality is we live in the internet age. We live in the age where you can pick up knowledge on your own. Not everything that you're taught needs to come from sitting behind a table in a lecture hall. Yeah. And so I think you just need these foundations, and then you just start adding stuff on. And now every day, like, we'll have technical meetings, and it helps. I have a computer engineering background, so when we're talking about what we're going to do in terms of making this new circuit for our device, I'm on board with my engineers. When we're talking about mechanical things like testing and making sure our devices don't fall apart in the human body, I'm on board with that. We're talking about the electrical stimulation and how can we make sure we reduce the amount of charge so that there's not an adverse effect in the body. I know that. And so it just, kind of comes from this interdisciplinary world that we're not going back to the, you do computer science and that's all you do is do coding and you'll never have to touch any other discipline. Like, that's not going to go back again. We're not going back to that again.
Thank God, because we definitely don't need that, right? Like, we need this innovation. Yeah. So what inspired you to come up with this company and this idea that you had to merge nanotechnology into the space that you're in? We haven't really talked about that, but your primary product relates to hearing. Yeah. So how did you make that connection? So I'm just going to be honest, when I came out of undergrad, I just knew I loved computers. And I wanted somehow to do computers and combine computers and medicine. Okay. And I was still, I'm dating myself, but I graduated in 2005. So biomedical engineering still was developing, really. It had been in existence for a while, but it was things like people advise me, don't get a biomedical engineering PhD because people won't know where to put you, where to hire you. They still do that now. I think they still advise some students not to pursue it because there just aren't many jobs. We haven't caught up, with the need for the innovation in certain spaces. And so when I got to grad school, you don't really get, you don't get to choose your projects. Yeah. It wasn't like people always said, did you have a relative that was deaf and hard of hearing? Or did you have, it's like, no, I got to grad school and I said, you can choose Dr. Advisor, one I liked, and, Dr. Kenzel Wise, and he said, you can choose to work on the brain, recording from the brain, or you can choose to work on stimulating inside the ear for hearing loss. And I chose the cochlear implant project because I really wanted to work on a project that I knew could make a human impact in the next, at that time I thought, well, the next 5 to 10 years, I wanted something that in my lifetime was going to make an impact. And I saw the other projects as great and exciting and stimulating, in terms of emotionally intriguing, but I didn't see anybody using that technology before, I was rolled up into a grave. Ooh. So, and that's just being honest. So I chose the cochlear implant project, and I certainly wasn't thinking about starting a business. It wasn't until my very last year of grad school, I was writing my dissertation, still trying to get data, and there was a lot of buzz around entrepreneurship at University of Michigan, and I thought, well, let me
go to check it out just to build my CV, to say at least I had the experience, because I heard people were talking about, oh, you go to the interview process, they ask you about entrepreneurship now. So I just, kind of did it as a curiosity, and the curiosity turned into something more. I started winning business plan competitions, and that really kind of pushed me into saying, okay, I could start this company, which I think is also a point that I want to make, is that entrepreneurs, people feel like, oh, you have to be born an entrepreneur, and you have been selling lemonade since you were a child. And sometimes, and the same could be said of computer science. Sometimes it's just being immersed in something that you're not sure if you want to get into and finding out that you like it. So, computer science is the same. Just being around the coding, like doing the Black Girls Code camps and things like that, like just experiencing it, and then you might find, oh wow, I really like this. This is for me.
Yeah. So just kind of exposure to the opportunity to participate in entrepreneurship gave you a more entrepreneurial mind and kind of hone those skills so that you could go out and start your own company.
Exactly. And then when you do those, business plan competitions, they put you in several different panels of investors, and they just tear you to shreds. I mean, it's like
it's like a dissertation.
Yes, jeez, it's worse. Guys, they don't have any script. And the thing is, it's worse because now I know, but when I first started, I didn't know. So like the very first time that I had been put in one of these kind of Shark Tank panels is for like the first round of the competition, and pitching with my partner at that time, my business partner at that time, and I just felt like we got torn to shreds. These guys were like making low blows, I felt, and I was just like, I left, I went home, shed some tears, and I was like, oh Lord, I'm getting out of this thing. I will not, this is terrible. Like I thought it was harder in engineering. Like these guys are ruthless, and I just like, I just thought I did a terrible job. The guy I was working with at the time, he was in the MBA program. He's like, oh, we didn't do too bad. And I'm like, are you crazy? This guy's nuts, then I picked this nutso business partner. Like, what am I doing? But we ended up winning that round. And so I learned that lesson right there, that in the business world, when they start making low blows, that means that there's nothing of value for them to critique.
Right.
Wow. So now, from that moment on, when I pitch in front of investors, and if they start, like if they're making kind of things, so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing really good, because they're really tearing apart anything of intellectual value. They have to have something negative to say. They're just saying something negative.
What's an example of like one of these kind of low blows? Like, and your shoes is ugly.
And your shoes is ugly. Who told you about them listed? And it'll just be like kind of the equivalent of your shoes is ugly with your business. Oh Lord, you think you're gonna get this company off the ground with $200,000? You're not gonna go off $200,000. It's gonna take $1 million. You're such an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. Get out of here when you come back when you got some better, when you got some, you understand what you're doing in the world of business. When they get to kind of like tearing down you as an entrepreneur and your credibility as an entrepreneur,
they just want to steal your idea. Not
really steal your. Shoot, some of them might, but I think it's not really that. It's just like, they have to find. And now when I judge competitions, now I understand too. It's like there's this pressure. You have to find work by process of elimination. So you're trying to poke holes and stuff. And when you can't poke holes in like the technical side of it, you try, then the person isn't really, maybe this, I got to figure out, maybe this isn't the right person to bring this idea to fruition, And they've done studies to show that they're much harsher on women than they are on men.
I'm sure black
suppress.
Make it any better, right?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't make it any better. Now, I will say one thing that surprisingly was an advantage, I guess, is that when you're an African American female and you stand in front of a panel of investors, they have no context for you because they haven't seen, and especially when you're talking about technology, they have no context. Like they've never seen it before in their life. And some get mind blown.
Unicorn.
Right. And so they just get mesmerized by your purple rainbow, horn.
Right.
And I used to have like advisors, and they would say, Angelique, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, like they would go through, because we had 3 people on the pitching team, and so he would go to each one and he would say, this is what you need to do, this is what you need. And he would get to me and say, Angelique, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, just like keep doing it. Like they love you, like they're mesmerized. Like I don't know what like you're saying, and he's watching the whole thing too, and he's just like, I don't know what it is, but they just love you. And I think they're having a black woman stand in front of them, be confident, to know the technology and know the business side of it was just like, they were like, oh wow, like this is something that we gotta be a part of.
As a person who started off in tech and then now you have this business, like what did you do to build up your business skills? Like for people out there who, are in tech and they are thinking about a company where they have no idea like what business, anything they need to know. Like, what did you do?
The University of Michigan had a really good program going on at that time. I don't know if they still do it or not. I would hope so. Where, as part of this business plan competition, it was almost, I don't know if they had planned it this way, but to me it was pretty genius. So what they did was they had a seminar series where they taught you how to build a business plan for your idea, but they merged that with the competition. So on, let's say Monday, I can't remember the exact days, but like on Monday, the beginning of the week, they would teach you a topic. Like, here's how you do a competitive analysis. And then at the end of the week, you would have to pitch your business to a panel of judges, and you were going to merge that topic somehow to produce another part of your business plan that you were pitching. Wow. So there was a positive reinforcement to get the knowledge, to ask everybody you could ask about how to do it, to work it out, to hash it out, because you were pitching. And the prize for the whole competition was like $30,000. I think it could have been like up to 35 when you added all these extras into it. So I always encourage people, either do a boot camp, and there's a lot of incubator programs now. I hold boot camps in Louisville. We do boot camps for entrepreneurs of color and women that want to get into business and have an idea. We walk them through how to do a business plan, how to vet their idea. Now we use Business Model Canvas, which is really popular. So that's the best thing you can do, when you just have your idea. Because the thing is, you might wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to make purple cookies and the world's going to love it. And what we normally do is we go out and get some dye, we get some purple cookie batter, and we, spend all this money. And, some people even go as far as, paying for rent in a bakery. But hopefully you stop yourself at the farmer's market. So at least I'll start at the farmer's market. Mm-hmm. And you do all this stuff, and you spend now maybe, a few $100s. You get out to the farmer's market, and nobody wants to eat purple cookies, because you didn't ask anybody along the way. You didn't do any customer discovery along the way before you just started going out there and doing it. And then we get so fixated on, well, nobody ate them here, but they're going to eat them somewhere. It's like the purple cookies are your new mixtape, It's like a bad rap mixtape.
Do the children, back of your trunk. Do the children know what mixtapes are these days?
Oh, gosh, maybe not. It's a bad YouTube, I don't know what, influencer page.
What's the new, a t-shirt? Maybe
a new t-shirt. I don't even know what the analogy is.
It'll
be a bad SoundCloud.
It's a bad SoundCloud.
That would be the equivalent.
That's it. But to me, the most important thing you can do as an entrepreneur is first vet your own idea. If you're trying to sell purple cookies, then go to the mall, stand in the mall, and ask random people about their connection to cookies and whether they've ever thought about coloring cookies or what, ask some general things around cookies, and you might find out that purple cookies isn't actually the move. Maybe the move is cookie bars. They are like Snickers bars are wrapped up. They look like a Snickers bar, but it's a cookie, and you can, and a purple package maybe. Maybe you can figure out some way to get your purple in there, right? Purple Rain cookie bars or something. So that's really what I believe in training people to do, is to vet their idea by just asking people outside their friends and family and getting real user feedback before you spend hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars on a bad business idea. Or a business idea just needs to be re-vetted and tweaked to make it even better.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, I think one thing people tend to get very sensitive about their baby, their project. You don't want to hear anybody give any criticism. And then it's sort of complicated by the fact that the people closest to you, like you said, like your mom's going to be like, oh yeah, baby, you can do anything you want. So your friend's going to hype you up. So you need to get that stranger to, tell you like it is.
Yeah, and then that whole baby analogy, the other thing we do is, so people either do that where they get everybody around them to tell them positive things. So it's usually friends and family. Or what you see is this like toxic bravado that happens in the entrepreneurial world, which deters women and minority entrepreneurs from even getting in the game, because it tends to be a toxic white male bravado, but it spreads across ethnicities and also across genders, where you're really insecure about your baby. So instead of admitting that, maybe you didn't have the cutest baby in the world, or maybe, your baby is bald-headed. Maybe your baby your baby ain't got no hair. Right. So we've all seen the babies with no hair that got, 5,000 bows on 2 strands. And people walking around like the baby's the best thing in the world. Well, that's what people do with their business. It's like,
I need a napkin, because I'm about to start crying, laughing.
I'm thinking about, like, remember Rugrats?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
And it had all the hair going in different directions.
Some people are out here with their business going in all different directions, and they
Let's bring it back. Let's just bring it back.
But you can't tell them nothing.
You just can't tell somebody about how crazy their business is when their baby looks a hot mess.
Right.
Yeah.
They aren't trying to hear it.
But the thing is this: those are the people that when you walk in the room with a good business idea, will make you feel like your business is garbage and theirs is great. So it's this bravado that's in the entrepreneurial world where people walk in with all this swagger about how much I raised or how much I'm gonna raise, and it all becomes about raising money. Like that's the currency in the startup world, is how much money have you raised. You know, who cares how much money? Is your product on the shelf? Is anyone using your product? Since when did how much you raise become a merit? And so people have that bravado. And so it deters women and minority entrepreneurs because you're easy fruit for them to kind of build their bravado on by pushing you down. And so those environments, at least for me, can sometimes be toxic. So I actually don't hang around a lot of, you know, entrepreneurial networking groups. Hey, come to this network and that network thing. And you get there and it's just a lot of people with a lot of bravado. So we have, when I do training or when I hold a networking event or something, I say it's a bravado-free zone.
That's great.
So I try to be honest about what's going on in my business, and I encourage everybody to be honest. Just, you know, you can't get help. You can't grow if you're not honest about what needs to be worked on.
And that's a valuable thing to bring across different types of things, like not just in the startup world, but like if you're going to graduate school, that is a good skill to master, understanding that you don't know everything, right? And you aren't the expert yet.
Right.
And the goal is to get you to that level, but you have to humble yourself to be successful.
You ain't got the lie, Craig.
Exactly. Well, actually, you know what you're talking about.
Well, actually.
Yeah. So, speaking of, you know, getting your startup off the ground and finding ways to fund yourself, where did you get your money from to start your company? Did you come out of your pocket? Did you use the 10 other people in your family to help get it started, or what did you do?
So that's, you know, as and I'm not making a blanket statement, but just the facts are the facts. As African Americans, we don't have a lot of generational wealth because of something called slavery. So we don't have a lot of friends and family money. And everybody's always like, well, your first round of money comes from friends and family. And I can remember my business partner early on, because he was a white male, early on said, well, y'all go to, you know, this, that family member. And I'm thinking to myself, well, my family, I wouldn't even dare go to my family and ask for it. So because even if they had it, I would feel bad about taking it because it's risky. It's very risky.
Yep. Yeah.
So what I did was I did a lot of business plan competitions. So I probably raised maybe around $50,000 when all was said and done from the business plan competitions, around something like 45, 50. And then I applied to an NSF I-Corps grant. And the I-Corps program is designed to be another step of business training. So that's another thing I recommend to people outside of the incubators. It's another kind of national incubator program. And that gave you $50,000 at that time. We were like at the first cohorts.
That's amazing.
So they gave you $50,000. And then from there, I applied to NIH, National Institutes of Health, SBIR program. So I applied for phase 1 and I got that. Then I applied for phase 2 and got that. And so a lot of our money has come from grants or from just competitions. And then the state of Kentucky matched the grant funding that we had through a grant program that they had. So in medical device field, especially in our field, since we're doing like the highest class of devices, you know, it's going in the body for long periods of time, it could be a 10-year roadway from start to finish. So the more free money, non-dilutive is kind of what you call it, money that you can get to build value in your company and then take on investors. And we did have, there was early on an investor, angel investor that had wanted to invest. But at that time I thought, you know, I don't even know what I'm doing with this company. I don't want to be responsible for your money. Now, if I was a white male, I wouldn't even thought that thought, you know. I would just taken the money and
Isn't that interesting?
done what to done. But, you
how
know,
we kind of like prevent ourselves from having opportunities because we're more cautious, I feel like, in general with things like that. Like money is not something that you have the opportunity to have often. And so when people offer it to you, you wonder like, well, what strings might be attached to this, right? At least with, you know, the SBIR, or Small Business Innovation Research funding, there really aren't strings attached but for you to innovate, right? So I get that.
It's perfect. And when you're, you know, kind of on the fringes of this, you you do have to be careful. The reality is you do have to be careful with the money that you take. Anybody has to be, any entrepreneur, whether they're white male or not, has to be careful. But you're right, there could be strings attached. And I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that you get an investor, and what you don't realize is, yeah, you may still own 60% of your company, but he who owns the gold makes the rules. So it doesn't matter if they own 20% of your company. If their money is the only money that's making it work, then they own you. And they can ride you, and they can turn your product into dog food if it makes them money. So, and that's a reality that happens. It happens. Like, if you think about it, somebody, you know, as wonderful a hit as Twitter is, Twitter wasn't Twitter. Twitter was a side project for somebody working on a whole nother company idea. And so somebody probably is out there thinking, dang, I wish Twitter hadn't come around because I was really going to move forward. You know what I'm saying? So investors will get whatever they can get, and that's what they're supposed to do. So, you know, for me, the more value you can build, the more solid story, the more solid marketplace validation you can build in your company before you take on an investor, the better, because that way you're showing them that, okay, this doesn't need to be dog food at the end of the day. We can make money if we keep it saving lives.
So I know you said that you were a business of one for many, many, many years. So you had to make all of these decisions around the money and where it went, but not just the money, the work itself and what you were pursuing. So how did you prioritize? How did you plan? How did you strategize to get to where you are today, where you have several employees and, you know, you're responsible for less in terms of like all of the day-to-day details?
I wish I could say I had a grand plan. In entrepreneurship, it really is like, you just don't know. In the beginning, so I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted to continue with the business. I didn't know if it was going to be successful. I thought it, probably if you asked me, I probably thought it was going to be a failure. But one thing I did know is I was going to make whatever money, little coins I had, were going to stretch. I learned that growing up, being poor. Whatever coins I had, I had to make it stretch. And whatever I did with my time, I had to make my time stretch. So I always strategically took positions that, you know, although I wasn't sure if I wanted to 100% go into to doing MemStim as a startup, I didn't want to close the door. So I took positions that allowed me to work both on the company and get paid. And that tended to be positions in academia or related. Like even the I-Corps program was a postdoc position, but it specifically allowed me to work on the company as a core part of the postdoc. And then I went to University of Louisville as a research faculty member there. And so I took projects that were, you know, it's a conflict of interest to work on the company, but it's like saying, if I want to make cookies, okay, I can't go work at, you know, Insomnia Cookies and just take all, you know, because a conflict. But what I could do is I could go work at the cake company, and I'm learning all about the baking industry. I'm learning all about, you know, how you bring in ingredients at a low cost. So you're building your business in a way, but you're getting paid for it. And
is that how you learned like the grant writing process and all of that? Okay.
How did you learn how? Because you know, just like rattled it off, like, oh yeah, I wrote a grant for phase 1, got it. Got a grant for phase 2, got it. Like, how in the world?
Yeah, because like, Kyla's over here like, I got a bunch of grants now, but in the beginning,
it was difficult. Like for me, it was really hard to learn like what to write, how to write it, how to package things in a way that it could be funded. So like,
by the grace of God, like I'm telling you, I still like, and when I say by the grace of God, people are like, oh, you're being too churchy. The reality is, people have done it at studies, and they've shown most entrepreneurs, I don't care if it's Steve Jobs all down, will tell you luck is what they call it, had a big part to do with this. So I do think a lot of it's definitely by the grace of God. But then in terms of technically, when I wrote my first grant, it was an SBIR phase 1. It was when I was still a student, and I got terrible reviews, and my instinct was, oh, terrible reviews, tore me apart, said I was too young, didn't have anything going on with my life, you know, more or less, and I got a job, got your hair, you know. So they had all these things to say. So I just took it as, well, I'm not going to go down this route again, until I was at a conference, and I was talking to a woman who's so well respected in our field. Like, she's like, you know, one of my heroes. And she started telling me the story about like, oh yeah, I applied for an SBIR and didn't get it till the third time. And I was like, oh, so you should probably keep applying to this? Like, it dawned on me that, okay, I wasn't an absolute failure because I got denied the first time. So the second time I applied, I got it, and then I got the phase 2. But I think what helped was I had somebody pushing me. We actually had somewhat of a probably contentious relationship, maybe. He was like a thorn in my side, but he really, like, he was a grant writer, and I would submit, the second time I would submit to him, and he said, this is terrible, and he'd mark it up, and he would put all these red marks on it, and he would say, you know, but he But he would tell me to make changes, but I was like, but you're not telling me exactly what to change. And the reality is he didn't know exactly. You know how we write this grant? They don't know exactly. They just know it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but I think what I'm a pretty good storyteller if I can get, because I want everything to fit in the line. And if you can want everything in your life to fit like a puzzle sometimes, and it helps you with the grant, because you want from the first base to the end, I want this to be a continuous flow.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you do your dissertation and there's a whole bunch of separate stuff you did over, 5, 6, 10, 12 years, depending on how long it took you. And but you got to make it all, weave it into one story. So the dissertation process helped. I was like, okay, how do I weave this into one story?
Yeah,
and I just sat down and I thought with that context of it needs to all flow. And I don't know, I spent maybe a day in the library restructuring everything, and I sent it to him, and he was like, this is gorgeous. Like, I don't know what you did. I really don't know what you did, but this is perfect. Like, he's like, you didn't take any of my advice, but this is great. You know?
But I know, like, one of the tenets of, like, entrepreneurship is to fail hard and fail fast. And fail often, right? Because the faster you fail, the faster you're going to get to that innovation, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you learned that kind of through the fire, but graduate school is definitely a good place to learn how to fail.
Oh, yeah.
Plenty.
Plenty of failure.
There's no lack of failure.
Plenty of failure.
That's your daily portion of failure.
Right.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wake up, fail. Lunch, fail.
It's like the Game of Thrones. Instead of shame, it's like fail, fail. It's your advisor with a cat of 9 tails.
Why did I agree to let y'all two on this show together? Whose idea was this? Thank you so much, Angelique, for being on our show today.
Yes, thank you. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I want to make sure that people can find you after this interview. So how do they find you on social media?
For Twitter, I am Dr._Angelique.
Okay.
That's my handle. And Instagram, which I just started to
IG,
is The Visionaire. And so that's TheVissIONAIRE. So it's like millionaire. Instead of money, you are vision rich. So it's The Visionaire.
Okay.
She got all
2
of it.
S's.
Because one is a $sign.
Yeah. That's what I should. Can you do that? Can you do that on Instagram? Can I use $signs on my handle on Instagram?
Yes, you could.
I could have?
Probably.
I don't know. I think so.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna change it up.
No, do not change it because then people
Yeah.
can't find you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, never mind then.
And as always, you can find us. As always, you can find us on our website at modernfigurespodcast.com. You can send us an email at askus@modernfigurespodcast.com. And you can find Kyla and I on Twitter. Kyla is at Dr._Kyla, and I am at Jeremy Waysome. Okay, so until next time, drink some water, eat some vegetables.
And be extra, like guacamole, because guacamole adds quality and isn't just extra for no reason.
There we go.